thank you for sitting down.
Of course.
So you told me that you could not be vegan because you like meat too much.
Yep.
So I'm going to quickly define veganism, just so we're starting sort of in the same place.
Yep.
And veganism is basically the ethical belief that animals are not ours to use, exploit, or commodify for food, clothing, entertainment, or any other purpose.
Yep.
So eating meat obviously falls under exploitation and use.
Yep.
And so I'm wondering what it is about meat that makes you think you couldn't give it up.
I've just eaten meat all my life. That's just kind of everything that I eat is pretty much meat consistent. So that's just pretty much how I've been born and raised. And follow-up question to you would be, when did you and why did you want to be vegan?
So I went vegetarian first when I was 14. And that was because I just made the connection that the dead animal on my plate was somebody who like had a life and was sentient and like didn't want to die. So I just kind of recognized that I didn't want to be a part in basically killing for what didn't have to happen, right? So it's been shown, proven over and over again that pretty much anybody can be healthy on a plant-based diet. So I was like, well, if this kind of goes against my morals and my ethics, I don't want to participate in this.
Absolutely.
And so like 2.5-3 years ago, I finally sat down and watched the documentary Dominion, which basically just goes through all several. You've heard of it? I'd recommend you to watch it. And I can see you don't want to, but I'm telling you.
No, I watch a lot of stuff. I spend a lot of time watching just different movies and different documentaries.
Okay,
So.
I'd love for you to watch Dominion because I'd love to see you watch it and then tell me that meat tastes as good afterwards.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. I heard there's a lot of dark stuff on there, but I have no comment towards that part.
It's dark stuff that you pay for, every time that you buy meat.
Yep.
So, and then what finally changed for me is I was just like watching this and I just recognized that even with vegetarianism, animals die for eggs and they die for milk as well. And I was like, I just don't want to participate in this.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I just decided, I was like, I don't want to live in a way that contradicts my morals and my ethics.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one follow-up question for you as well. I'm kind of flipping the script here because now I'm asking you more questions. But,
sometimes that's the way it goes.
So I know that there's okay, so let's say, for example, if we were worried about overpopulation, let's say that we didn't kill any cows or we didn't kill any chickens or anything like that. For example, like in Hawaii, they have a large populace of chickens that are a severe problem for most of them because they're loud, annoying, and tend to just mess things up and be dirty. What would be the solution to that?
So a solution to overpopulation of chickens in Hawaii?
No, not specifically chickens in Hawaii because that's just funny at this point and it's fun to be out there and just make fun of the chickens.
Okay.
But I mean, is just like, let's say we stop killing cows in general, then if cows continue to populate and repopulate and we have an issue with the amount of cows or if we have an issue with the amount of chickens and so forth. And are you thinking of it in terms of keeping them contained or are you thinking about letting them free roam?
Okay, so when we talk about like ending meat and like what would happen to the animals, so it's most likely that it'll happen kind of slowly over time. Like we'll decide, we don't want to do this anymore. And so the animals that we eat are actually bred into existence specifically to become food. So realistically, as demand decreases, the number of animals bred into existence will also decrease. So theoretically, by the time that we do societally decide like, we're not going to be doing this anymore, there actually won't be any surplus of animals to deal with because we simply won't be breeding them into existence.
Okay.
So that's generally how that would go.
Okay. Absolutely.
Yeah, that one's a pretty easy one when you like.
You've been asked that question. I can tell you've been asked that question.
I've been asked that question. Yeah, it's the supply and demand thing, right? Like it's a business at the end of the day. So they're not going to be producing something that they're not going to be able to sell.
Yeah, absolutely. So then would it be, trying to think of my follow-up question to that. So then their purpose would just be to just exist?
Well, they wouldn't exist if we're not breeding them. So like the domesticated cow or the domestic... Okay.
I'm so sorry.
All good. The domesticated chicken, they're not animals that exist in nature. So theoretically, it would actually be kindest to just stop breeding them entirely. So to let those species go extinct.
So you're thinking of it kind of like a pig turning into a boar. It's the same development of that. In the same way, shape, or form.
I think I maybe don't exactly understand, but yeah, it's like a pig is a domesticated animal, right? And like the chicken, for example, that people eat is a type of animal that's been bred very specifically to be a specific kind of animal. So they're actually like really physically unwell because they're too heavy for their legs and they live pretty terrible lives because of like their actual species that we've created.
Yeah, to kind of connect that, just because I don't quote me on this whether or not it's 100% true, but I heard some study where they basically took pigs, put them in the woods for a little while. And I think after a short period of time, they ended up coming out with tusks from the same likeness of a boar. So the question is if they're going to develop into something like that, which boars are extremely violent creatures and pretty deadly. The question then would be, what would be the concern of the evolution of them from there?
So
Or do we know of what they would evolve into over time?
no, I don't think that that's really too much of a concern with veganism anyways, because as I said, it's not really that those animals will at any point kind of be released into the wild, so there's not even going to be an opportunity for that to happen.
So you mean like facilitating their life, but not killing them, you're just facilitating their life. So they're still contained, but you're facilitating their life, so facilitating the land for them to live on and everything like that. So you're basically giving them a place to
Live out the rest of their life.
live out the rest of their life in that fashion.
So if there were animals in the case of, like I said, this doesn't feel like something that's too much of a concern because of that supply and demand thing.
Yeah.
So ideally, I think that the animals would be, extinct before we get to the point where we have like a lot of them that we need to take care of.
Yeah.
So it's really not something that I think is hindering like you or me going vegan sort of in the future.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So have you considered? You said you eat meat every day. It's like everything that you eat.
Yeah.
I
won't go into details, but yeah, I eat meat.
You eat pretty much every day.
Bacon, everything.
How do you feel about the fact that an animal had to die for your food?
Honestly, that is kind of how I think of it, as the process of life itself. I think that from the beginning of time, we've always consumed animals, consumed plants, and so forth. I mean, there's been an evolution where we consume maybe more animals, but I think that we consume more animals because we also our population has grown across the world at such a large scale, and in order for it to grow, we've gone into some unethical ways of farming and eating and producing animal products to the populace. But I do think that as of today, I don't think that I think there will always be their role in terms of over time and how we've evolved and how we've kind of came from that beginning. We've always eaten meat, and me being Hispanic and me being Asian, that's pretty much the staple of it is food. We always cook. We love to eat carne asada, chorizo, and then from Asia we got so many different food options. I mean, that's just the lifeblood of the culture is eating. We bond through food.
Yeah, so you mentioned kind of two main things there. The first one is that we've done it for a long time, so therefore it makes it okay to do now. But do you think of anything else that we've done for maybe in the past that we now think is unethical?
That is definitely where it's a catch-22, sure. That you will get me on that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that comparing the extremes to something like that is tough to do, because if you were to compare it to something like really harsh, such as I'm sure everybody can think of it in today's generation because it's still a vocal point in discussion, is racism, for example. Comparing the extremes of eating food and eating meat in particular versus racism is hard to really compare. I feel like I get how it can be observed to be to try to be compared, but I think it's two very far extremes.
So it's really not about comparing victims of certain things. It's rather recognizing that just because something has been done in the past doesn't make it okay to be doing it in the present, right? So we don't need to compare victims of certain types of oppression in order to validate the oppression, right? So it's just more to recognize that having a history of doing something doesn't make it moral or ethical, right?
But where does the line draw in terms of animals are living and breathing?
Mm-hmm.
Plants are technically living and breathing.
Yeah.
So where do we draw the line?
So sentience is typically where the line is drawn. It's not really a line, it's more of a spectrum. So there are certain things on one end of the sentient spectrum. You can think like a rock, for example. And then we might have plants, and then we get to animals, and then we might even put humans at the top of that sentient spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that, eating plants is considered preferable to eating animals is because plants aren't considered sentient, And so eating a plant is less terrible for the plant than eating a cow is terrible for that cow.
So in terms of most of the documentaries online, correct me if I'm wrong, most of them are going to have pretty brutal ways or industrial versions of of killing the animal to then butcher them and collect their meat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would doing it in a more ethical way change your ideology or change your view of consuming animals to, let's say, people, like you said, it's going to take time for people to decide to become vegan or decide to stop eating meat.
Mm-hmm.
Would that change affect in any way your opinion on that?
Well, the question that I would ask in return to that is, how do you ethically kill somebody who doesn't want to or have to die?
Well, I think there's a tricky question there in terms of how to or want to die.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of a lot of people's eyes who wants to eat or eat meat, that is just naturally just what they want to do. Some people make their own different decisions. That's the unique part of life, is that we all can make our own decisions.
The decision has a victim, though. So
it's true, but the victim, there's not really much of a great response to that, because every single way that I respond to that, you're going to get me. Me being not the most familiar with this and also being extremely tired, I'm struggling to try to have a conversation about it without catching myself falling into a trap.
Well, I do appreciate your openness. I want to address what you said about culture really quickly, about how like your culture, there's a lot of meat eating, and that's a really common concern that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
And so I want to address that quickly. That you can still experience all the flavors of a culture through plant-based and animal-friendly foods. So, for example, both my parents are German, and when I stopped eating meat, does it make me less German?
No, of course not.
Exactly. So you can still have all the important things about your culture. You can still eat all the foods. You can have all the flavors. It just takes a little bit of effort at the beginning to figure out which substitutions you can, put in for where you were previously eating animal products.
Well, I will say you definitely have a lot of great points, and I definitely would say that you're very great at catching me into falling into traps of conversations, and definitely I might have put myself in some of those traps for sure. But I do think that if it makes me look to be the bad guy, then that's perfectly fine. But in terms of my opinion on it, is I have no care or preference if someone wants to be a vegan, or even you. I have mass respect for you for being able to sit down, put a camera up, and be willing to talk, to have people sit down and actually open a discussion or possible arguments with some people, because some people are very don't know how to have these conversations peacefully. But call me a bad person, but I just don't. I'm going to continue to eat meat. I do understand that it's, to a degree, the way that they do it is incorrect, I think, in a lot of ways, shapes, or form. I've had meat straight from a local farm. I've had the meat that way, where they don't treat the cows terrible. They don't treat any of the animals terrible. They try not to kill them in an unhumane way, or kill them in ways that would just be completely incorrect. And I know a lot of local and small town farmers and cattle farmers try to be as best as they can towards those animals, because they respect the life of them. But at the same time, to me, as a bad guy, to a lot of people, it's a cow. I don't view it as a person. I don't view it as the same respect.
You don't have to view it as a person. You just have to view it as higher than your sensory pleasure. So basically, all you have to say is that you recognize
but it makes me happy when I eat a cow. It makes me happy when I eat meat, like bacon. Well, bacon's really interesting because they eat a lot of bad stuff and garbage and all this other stuff. So it doesn't make me feel the greatest eating bacon.
So basically, we're comparing an animal's life to your sensory pleasure, right? So we're elevating. So is there other things that we could do? Can we do anything to an animal as long as we get sensory pleasure from it?
Well, like I said before, I mean, in terms of how I like to either buy meat from local farmers, I don't like to buy it from people who from people who are mass producing them and selling them in markets. A lot of the time, a lot of those cows may not be even treated very fairly. So for example, like Wagyu beef, if you're buying it from Japan, those cows are massaged and taken care of really, really well until up to their death, and even then they're humanely killed peacefully to make sure of that. So it's like
so the cow doesn't care how they live, if a cow, when they get killed, they don't care, right? If it's obviously there's better and worse ways to kill somebody, but at the end of the day they don't have to die. So what we're doing is we're just saying that for our sensory pleasure, somebody has to die. And so like if we said that somebody was like torturing pigs because they liked the way that it sounded, they're technically getting they're experiencing joy from that, right? So would we say it's okay to torture pigs because we like the way that it sounds?
No, but if you're taking a cow, taking a pig, taking an animal that we consume as people, whatever that may be, even ducks and so forth, whatever you eat, however you do it, you have to do it in a way that I would view as just not being a bad person about it. Like you're not going to be sitting there with a taser tasing every animal that comes through and then killing them and doing it in a most brutal way. Well, that just doesn't seem right to me.
It's funny that you mentioned a taser because they actually get sort of bolt gunned into the head.
Yes.
So that is actually...
That is, what animal is that again?
I know they do it for cows.
I know they do it more for... That is a quick way to kill them, but it is still messed up a little bit.
A lot of the time it actually goes wrong too, so it's like there's like delays in the line, and so like they actually come back to consciousness and stuff. So do you have your phone out? I'd like you to write down the documentary.
Sure.
Called Dominion.
Any closing points or anything else that you'd like to ask? Or
I just
discuss?
like to reiterate that animals, they don't want to die to be your food.
Yep.
You can live without killing animals, and I think that you should reconsider veganism. And it's easier when you try it, and I think that it's, at the end of the day, it's in line with. Oh, I did have one more thing to say. You keep talking about like these animals that die deaths that are like, what you would consider more humane.
Yep.
Do you ever eat at like a fast food restaurant?
No, I don't.
You never eat fast food?
Not anymore.
Ever at a restaurant?
Rarely.
Rarely at restaurants?
Rarely at restaurants.
Okay, because every time that you eat meat, where you don't know exactly where it's sourced, and even if you do know where it's sourced, like they really are misleading you intentionally with a lot of the labels. Like humane means basically nothing, free range means basically nothing, grass fed, they only have to like eat grass for like a certain amount of their life, so.
And then you have grain fed.
Yeah.
Different things like that. Definitely. But no, I do not eat at fast food. I've actually stopped eating at fast food starting this year. So there's one good side of me. There you go. But other than that, that is what it is.
All right.
All right.
Thank you very much for stopping, and check those documentaries out. Hello, and welcome to the reflection section of this outreach video. So this person sat down after telling me he could never go vegan because he loves meat too much. And this is from the same day as my last outreach video, so I haven't had the opportunity to implement what I've learned from that one into this conversation. So my number one gripe here is that I got off topic with the taser bolt gun thing. I really wish I had stuck to the animals as sensory pleasure thing. I can see in the video that this seemed to provoke some thought in him, and I think there would have been a lot to explore if I'd pressed him on the idea, since we can be healthy without animal products that we're basically just using them for sensory pleasure when we consume them. I'm so frustrated that I didn't follow through on that, and the crazy thing is, in the moment I didn't even notice it slip away from me, but I do hope that the part that we did get to at least triggered something for him, and I'm going to pay very close attention to the threads of conversation next time I do outreach so I can avoid this happening again. I also think I might need a better answer for, quote, what if the animals are raised well? I've heard the response that kind of goes along the lines of, if there was a happy dog or a miserable dog, is it better to kill the happy dog? And I think I might try that next time. I also wish that I had pointed out that even if animals are raised in a quote humane way on quote humane farms in good ways, that they're all killed at the same slaughterhouses, and that all methods used at slaughterhouses meet some criteria of humane as defined by some governing body. I think I would also ask him to describe how he thinks that the animals that he eats are killed, and then maybe mention something like the way that male chicks from the egg industry get killed on day one of life via like maceration or suffocation, and ask him if he thinks that that's humane. The other main issue, aside from getting sidetracked from the sensory pleasure thing, is that I don't think that I really found a way to tap into the heart of the issue and find a way that was meaningful to convey that animals are sentient individuals who should have a right to not be exploited in a way that like resonated with this person. I wonder if maybe testing his morality a little bit by asking if he would eat dogs and going down that route maybe would have been effective. There is also the method of asking them to imagine an animal like a pig about to be slaughtered and ask them what they would say to that animal if they were right in front of them to explain why this is happening to them. I think that his answer to this hypothetical could have been interesting, and I'm hopeful to try it in the future. If you have any specific insights into how I could have handled the claims about humanely raising the animals, or how you think I could have conveyed the ethical importance in a way that might have worked for this person, please let me know in the comments. Also, anything I've cut out from this conversation is either personal info that needed to be removed or just idle conversation while they were writing down resources that I was recommending. Just like with the last one, I feel like I could have asked him more questions and gotten him to come to some conclusions more on his own than just like telling him the answers. But anyways, I'm still hopeful that I planted some seeds and at least gave him a new perspective on veganism. He seemed like a thoughtful person who is intellectually honest, and I hope that he watches Dominion. Anyways, thank you for watching. Eat fruit and don't multiply. I will see you in the next video.